Welcome to That Dang Dad. My name is Phil, and tonight, Daddy does Disney. Song of the South is a 1946 musical produced by Walt Disney. It features live-action performances mixed with animation, very similar to Mary Poppins. However, unlike Mary Poppins, Song of the South appears to have been almost entirely forgotten by Disney fans. It appears on almost no top 10 lists, and I couldn't even find it on Disney+. I'm not sure why the film seems to have fallen off the radar, but I was able to acquire it anyway. Yo-ho, yo-ho. And I decided to give it a tumble. During my watch, something about the film kept jumping out at me again and again. Song of the South is an excellent companion to Dale Carnegie's 1936 classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you don't know, Carnegie's book is a self-help guide to being a better friend and a better salesperson by being a better communicator. It contains over 30 life lessons covering topics such as persuasion, conflict resolution, and leadership. Each chapter contains a couple stories from Carnegie about how people have applied these lessons to reach their goals. What does this have to do with anything? Well, Walt Disney became interested in the Uncle Remus stories that would later become Song of the South in 1938, acquiring the rights and hiring Dalton Raymond to pen a screenplay in 1944. Carnegie's book was incredibly popular during this time, selling hundreds of thousands of copies in its first few months, and it was well on its way to becoming part of the American canon. I think this provides valuable historical context for Song of the South, perhaps the only historical context necessary to understand the film. I'll give you a few examples to prove my point. So, the story begins when Johnny, a 7-year-old boy, is taken to live on his grandmother's rural Georgian plantation with his mother, while his father stays behind in Atlanta. Johnny decides to run away, but on his way off the property, he runs into Uncle Remus, an old man living with the plantation workers, who's known for his stories. When Johnny tells Remus that he's running away, Remus supports Johnny's decision and asks if he can run away with him. Before they leave, Remus suggests cooking some food for the road, and while the food cooks, he tells a story about Brer Rabbit trying to run away from his problems and finding only calamity. 4 times in the Song of the South, Uncle Remus executes a Carnegie move. Don't just tell people something is true, use a vivid story to dramatize an idea. People are far more likely to remember and relate to an interesting story. Case in point, the story of Brer Rabbit running away and getting caught in a rabbit trap causes Johnny to change his mind about running away. Remus pretends to protest Johnny's change of heart, but Johnny convinces Remus that they should stay on the plantation together. This is a classic example of another Carnegie maxim: let the other person feel the idea was theirs in the first place. When you're trying to convince someone of something, help them foster the conclusion you wanted them to reach on their own, because people are more willing to support an idea that they think they arrived at themselves. Remus knew telling Johnny not to run away would meet with resistance, so instead, he helped Johnny reach that conclusion on his own. Later in the film, Johnny and his crush, Ginny, are walking to Johnny's birthday party. Ginny's 2 dipshit brothers instigate a fight, which leads to Ginny falling in the mud and ruining her only dress. She runs away crying, and Johnny chases after, confessing he doesn't want to go to the party either because his father won't be there. The 2 sit on a log and cry together. Uncle Remus happens upon the 2 and discovers what's happened. At this point, Remus simply sits with the 2 kids and holds space for them while they grieve their situation. Rather than trying to solve their problems or tell them that it isn't a big deal, he honors their sadness, and then, when the time is right, he tells them another funny Brer Rabbit story to lift their spirits. To me, this final example is a great synthesis of 2 Carnegie ideas: see things from the other's point of view and show sympathy for their thoughts and desires. Oftentimes, the small-scale pains and fears of childhood are minimized by adults. Oh, there's nothing to be afraid of in the basement. Oh, there's no reason to be upset. It's only a little dirt on your dress. Instead of trying to talk them out of being sad, Remus allows them their pain and allows them a dignity that children often aren't afforded by adults. This builds trust between him and the kids, and it teaches them that their feelings are valid. These are just a few examples, but the film is full of Uncle Remus showing an almost preternatural wisdom about how to literally win friends and influence people. Why, you could almost say that he's magical. Anyway, that was my main takeaway from Song of the South. It's a masterclass in persuasion, compassion, and leadership. In fact, it's baffling to me that this film hasn't made a bigger impact on the culture. But now you know, it's a hidden gem, and it's probably something that you could show at a workplace training or something like that, if you can track it down. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment. Yes, I know Song of the South is pretty racist. I was pretending not to know for laughs, and besides, it's more fun to find something different to say about it than the racism angle, which everybody already knows, okay? Okay, great, thanks. Comment and subscribe if you had a good time. I sure appreciate your time, and I'll catch you next time. Good night.